Greetings. You're listening to the official Flourish Media podcast with Flourish Media founders Vivian Oladin and Dr. Tracy Timberlake. Listen in for marketing training and development tips from two ladies called the leaders in luxury learning. Get the tea on building a scalable, investor-ready business from the world's most accessible women-focused business funding organization.
Hello, everybody. Hello, tribe. This is the Flourish Media Podcast, and I am here. I'm Vivian Oladin. I'm here with Dr. Tracy Timberlake of Flourish Media.
Hello.
So today we want to talk about how you can make the most of the Q&A section at the Flourish Media Conference. So the Flourish Media Conference is a very unique experience where women business owners get to build relationship with angel investors and funders. And during this conversation, they're going to use a lot of words that you may or may not know. Tracy and I go to so many networking events. We just hobnob with the rich people on a very regular basis with finance people, and we are often squeezing each other's leg like, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
So we pulled out a couple of words that we thought you probably need to know what this means. So right away, inside the show notes of today's podcast, you can go and look at some vocabulary words that we think you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Make yourself familiar with them because the investors, a serious investor, I should say, a serious investor is going to say one of these things in the conversation.
And before we get to the actual words, don't feel bad if you don't know the words. Like, you're not supposed to. These are not words that we throw around in our vernacular as business owners necessarily. These are words that are really specific to the art of fundraising, getting investment funding, like in that world. So don't feel like, I just asked Vivian what one of them was. I was like, what is that? I have no idea what that word is. Okay, so what are the words?
Okay, so the first word we're going to talk about is a convertible note. A convertible note is a form of short-term debt that converts into equity, typically at the occurrence of a specific event, such as a future investing round. So that means that when you receive the money from them, that gives them equity in your company.
Yes.
That's what that means.
At a certain point in time. Not right away, because you don't have any necessarily, but at a
Right.
certain point in time.
And so the next word is equity. You know what that one is?
Well, I think you have the written
I do. I
definition.
have it. I'm cheating because I have it written down. But
Equity is the portion of money that you have in a company.
Yes. And so it's the ownership interest in the company. So that's when you go on Shark Tank, or if you watch Shark Tank and they said, well, you can get 3%, 4% of ownership of my company. That's equity. It's that percentage.
Right.
Okay. So we have due diligence.
Due diligence, making sure that there are things that you are both doing, saying, writing, making sure you have everything. The research process is due diligence. And most of the due diligence in the conversation with investors should be on their side. Yeah. They may say to you something like, okay, we need to do our due diligence, which means that they need to do their research. They need to look into you. They might have to do a background check on you. So before they can give funding, they're going to do their due diligence, which is just a series of research things, like points that they need to make sure that they hit.
Exactly that. And so burn rate. The burn rate is the rate in which a company spends its capital, typically measured on a monthly basis. So an investor might ask you, what's the burn rate in your company? And if you're like me and say, huh? What are you talking about? Oh, it's how much money do you spend every single month in order to keep the company open? And so that lets them understand how much money you need to make in order to be profitable. Because if you're making the same exact amount of money, or you're bringing in the same amount of money that is your burn rate, then that means the company is not profitable at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily bad, depending on the industry.
Yeah, exactly that. We all know that Amazon was running for a decade plus, didn't make any money.
Facebook same. Yeah.
So don't worry about that. So then we have the lead investor.
The lead investor is the person who is investing at the top, the one who is really the forefront of the investors. Because sometimes you can get many different ones. Usually the lead investor is going to have the most equity. The lead investor sometimes will have the most say in a process, depending on, how you're structuring that contract.
And so we have a bunch of other vocabulary words that are down in the description. You go and check it out. The word that Tracy just asked me about right before we started was the pro rata rights.
I was like, that's a pro rata. That's one word I've never heard.
Never heard it before.
Never heard.
And so what it is the right of the investor to participate in future funding rounds to maintain their ownership in that percentage. So as you are building your business and you are giving away equity in the business, different investors will get a different amount of equity at that time. But then the more investors you bring in, the smaller that percentage of everyone who owns. And so that pro rata right means the first people who came in first, they have an opportunity to double down so they can keep their percentage. Right. So when it comes to being able to develop your conversation and answering some of these questions, I think it's really important for us to talk about the reality of responding versus reacting.
Responding versus reacting. It's a good question, a good conversation to have.
Yeah. So it's about understanding your business and being comfortable with those things that you may not know. So there's definitely going to be moments in the conversation where you just don't know or you're challenged in some way. So Dr. Tracy, let's pretend. You just pitched, I'm the investor.
Okay.
So I heard your presentation and you're saying that you can bring in $200,000 in a year. Why aren't you making more?
And so this is a good point. This is a place where you can, one, get offended and react, or two, think quickly on your feet and respond. And it's very important to be honest in the response. So sometimes it's an education thing, right? It's, well, I've grown the business to $200,000 a year using the current systems and processes that I have, and I'm at capacity. One of the reasons why I'm looking for investment funding is because I'd love to bring on more human resource and more human capital so that we can grow, because that'll extend my time to be able to scale and make more money. One way to be honest about it. Number two, you can say something like, well, $200,000 is really kind of the max of in this industry. Sometimes that is. Like, there are industries that really just they're not $1 million industries.
Exactly.
$200,000 is a big deal, right? And so you can say that. But one thing is, I would say, a reactionary experience would be something like,
Get ready. Okay, give it to me.
Well, first of all,
we know.
First of all, I made $200,000 by myself, and I think that that's a lot of money to make. I think it's really offensive that you would say that that's all the money that how have I only made it because I'm by myself? So of course that's all right. There's a different way of communicating. Really the same thing. Because probably one of the truths of the matters is that, you are by yourself. And so $200,000 is all that you're at capacity for. But you can communicate that in a reactionary way or in a responsive way.
And as we're talking about your team and answering these questions, in the sense of, I'm making only $200,000 because I'm doing this by myself. Doing this by myself is I would say 70% of the reason why the business isn't growing. When you look at statistics or census statistics, we know that when you run your business by yourself, on average in the United States as a woman, you are making $58,000 per year.
Yep.
58. And I think that's important to know because we can get in our head. I know that our tribe typically is making about $115,000 and very, very much more. And so we are above average. We're an above average community of women.
Yeah.
And so don't judge yourself harshly, no matter where you are on that scale. But know that when you add one person, a VA, a helper, an intern, one person, that number...
Heck, a housekeeper.
It increases to 93 to 114,000.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a miraculous conversion of numbers when you look at the value of just having help. And it's not even full-time help. It's if you can get 15 hours of somebody to help you, that takes 15 hours of you get to take 15 hours back to do other things that can scale your business a lot faster than you just trying to do everything on your own.
For sure. And so let's look at that. If someone said, well, you're only making $200,000 in your business, that's an opportunity for you to talk about, well, yeah, I am. But
I am.
Average in the United States, in my industry, for my demographic, I'm doing exceptional.
Right.
And you get to say that. You should also know, if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in scaling your business as a woman entrepreneur, when you have a team of 3 in the United States as a woman, your business on average is making $348,000 per year. That's also really important to know. No matter where you are on the scale, whether you're very high above that or you're right there or below, these are numbers that are important to know because it helps you to have perspective when you're responding to someone when they're asking about your business.
It's very true. It's very true. And you are the expert in your industry. Our investors are not. They're experts in investing, right? They may have a lot of knowledge in a particular industry because that's the industry that they're most interested in, but they're not in it in the same way that you are in it.
So, when it comes to responding to different questions, here's another question that's very common.
Mm-hmm.
I heard your presentation. Is that just like X business? Aren't they doing the same thing? They're already doing that.
Again, an opportunity for you to respond or react. Ideally, if they are, then you can give them numbers in terms of competition because, again, we want industries that are viable because there are other people doing it in a way. So you can explain, yes, actually, it's very similar to this particular industry. Here's where I differentiate. Here's where I can take some of their market share and really being able to. That's another word that we don't have the list. Market share. Mm-hmm. You can communicate that with hard facts and hard numbers based on your own research, or you can get offended and say, no, not at all. Like, no, they're not doing the same thing at all. And how dare you compare me to so-and-so?
No, I'm different. I don't know what I'm different.
Right. And you can be different and you should be different. No two businesses are exactly alike. Mm-hmm. McDonald's and Burger King, they're both fast food industries. They both sell burgers and fries, but they do it in a very different way, right? Walmart and Target, big box stores, they both do it they're in neighborhoods, but they're both doing it in two completely different ways. And so don't look at the idea of competition in their eyes as something that's offensive. Look at it as an opportunity for you to really showcase your knowledge of your industry and where you're finding your positioning within that industry, even when you do have X number of competitors in there.
Yeah. So as you're preparing to be a part of Flourish Media Conference, if you've joined our private Facebook group, I encourage you all to go live in the group.
Yeah.
Practice your pitch. Be visible. Visibility is an amazing thing. It really transforms the opportunities that will come to you as a brand. And just to have that dialogue so you can practice responding to questions about your business because you really need to get comfortable with that.
You have to get comfortable. Like, the first time that you are pitching, the first time you're communicating about your business should not be on our stage. Like, you should have practiced several times before you get to the stage.
Yes, indeed. So stay up to date with Flourish Media Conference at flourishmediaconference.com. You can join our private Facebook group, which is linked down below in the show notes, or you can follow us. We are at Flourish Media Co. on all the things. If you're enjoying this conversation, share it with another woman business owner or other people in your tribe. We want to flourish with you.
See you next time. Bye.
Behind the Leaf. Never miss an episode and subscribe to the official Flourish Media podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. If this podcast sparked your curiosity or made you think of a fellow creative who could really use these gems, share it and help them flourish too.